Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming tonight. I hope we can interrupt your conversation for just a few moments. We appreciate you joining us. My name's Matt Shears. I'm the president of the Computer and Communications Industry Association. Thanks for joining us tonight to celebrate our 50th anniversary. We're here to mark 5 decades of CCIA fighting for open markets, open systems, and open networks. Since 1972, CCIA has been fighting for policies that promote the interests of the information, communications, and technology sectors and their users. And there have been some big fights, pivotal fights over issues like internet freedom, interoperability, and open competition. Just to name a few, fights that, had they gone the other way, might have significantly changed the technology that we know and use and love for the worse. And I can't think of a better place to celebrate tonight's occasion than here at Planet Word, a museum that celebrates communication and does so using interactive, innovative technology. As we mark 50 years of advocacy and celebrate the association's storied history, I would be remiss if we didn't acknowledge the contributions of someone who led this organization for half its existence, 25 years, Ed Black. Over the almost 2 decades that I've known Ed, as many of you do, he's been a dedicated, principled, and passionate champion for not only the industry and its constituents, but also its users and the consumers of those products and the internet at large. Ed's allies and adversaries alike would often agree that Ed is a force of nature. And during his tenure at the helm of CCIA, he worked tirelessly to create a level playing field and promote forward-looking policies that benefited not only the business community, but that community's users and the public at large. And also the next generation of innovation in whatever form that may take. It was a pleasure to work by Ed's side for so many years of that, and now to have him as our board chair. Ed was regularly out there leading the charge over the battlements, but he was also working behind the scenes, building consensus, brokering agreements, and trying to promote common points of view in pursuit of better technology for everyone. So allow me to show you a few brief remarks by several leaders who were there with Ed at the time.
CCIA and Ed Black as an individual leader and professional have shaped policy in so many ways for this country. The ability to not just drive for what you want, but to understand what the other guy wants and finding the intersection points where public interest and private interest align, and then working for the art of the possible, of how to take that intersection point of interests and bring them to fruition through policy, through legislation, sometimes through court cases. That takes critical thinking, strategic analysis, and very often political courage.
Ed's a David person, not a Goliath person. And he likes that fight. He was sort of born for that kind of fight. It was always a fight for good, that openness and competition brought benefit to everybody, and the importance of innovation, and that, you know, your son or my daughters, because the internet is the way it is, and Ed helped us keep it that way, they could come up with something and put it online and reach the world.
Ed was very true to his principles. There wasn't a lot of compromise when it came to doing the right thing, particularly from a policy perspective. There was times that I had encouraged Ed not to lead on a policy issue. Ed, took my input and then said, this is something we need to do. It's the right thing for the industry, and we'll figure it out. Ed was very committed to staying true to our mission statement and competition. It was always great to learn policy from somebody who, always put policy considerations front and center of any decision that we were making.
Back in the 1970s, when I was a senior executive at the Federal Trade Commission and we were being politically challenged, the CIA, very young at the time, was the only important trade association that actually stood up in public to support the Federal Trade Commission's antitrust authority. Years later, when I founded the American Antitrust Institute, it was natural that I would go to Ed Black and that Ed would become an advisory board member. Ed's passionate advocacy for competition policy within a democratic polity is something that will long be remembered and surely be missed.
It's a great pleasure to be able to offer my congratulations to Ed Black on a remarkable career, one that's contributed an enormous amount to our digital progress over many, many decades. But especially I want to thank Ed for his service in connection with activities at the State Department. His service as the chair of the Advisory Committee on International Communications and Information Policy was a terrific contribution. And later on, when I had the honor of serving at the State Department, Ed was a very reliable partner for all things involving internet freedom, freedom of expression, freedom with respect to digital trade. So Ed, it's been a wonderful career. I thank you very much for the contributions you've made.
Ed has been at this 30 years. Ed actually helped lead the policy discussions to keep up with the technology changes. And he has been my partner on some of the huge fights that we had over the years, including defeating SOPA, fighting for net neutrality. And, you know, I've worked with Ed my entire time in Congress to defend innovation in our country for greater prosperity for all of this. To Ed's credit, he never got left behind as the technology marched ahead. He's been a key figure in the development of policy in the tech field for all these years.
Ed, it's great to celebrate the incredible impact you've had at CCIA. You've been one of Washington's leading advocates for innovation and a voice for sensible technology policy. You've pushed policymakers to make it clear rules while making sure that the concerns of the present don't foreclose the incredible possibilities of the future. You've been one of the tech industry's most effective strategists and spokespeople in the corridors of power, bringing a relentless approach to advocacy. And on a personal level, you've been a tremendous role model for what it means to lead, grow, and adapt an organization to changing times.
I started my career in DC, working directly with Ed right outside his office. I was 21 years old at a time when young folks in DC were switching jobs quite frequently. I stayed 12 years, learned just about everything I knew from DC, in politics and policy and tech and antitrust from working with Ed. It's obviously a hugely formative aspect of my career. So couldn't think of a better person to learn the tech policy ropes, to learn the antitrust policy ropes, to learn the DC ropes from Ed. I wouldn't trade that experience for the world.
Thank you for being a guide and a mentor to me and to so many others. It's been a great ride, and I hope that we can all make him proud.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your leadership, Ed.
Ed, you're more than a leader and an extraordinary one, and you are more than a shaper of industrial history and public policy history. You're a beloved and respected personal friend. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being the heartfelt friend that you are and have been. Thank you for the adventures and the successes and the partnership, but thank you for the fun.
So, Ed, with gratitude for your decades of leadership and service to the industry and in recognition to all you've done for the interests of our sector, I'd like to present you with the John H. Chapman Award for Outstanding Public Service.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you. I'm going to put this back here and you can. My pleasure.
Well, I didn't expect all that. Thank you very much. I only have a few things to say, not much. 7 years. Really, thank you to all the people I've worked with over the years. It's been a mutual exchange of insight, endeavor, sharing purpose, accomplishing things. It's rewarding. It's very rewarding. It's humbling. It's been an honor and a privilege, and I truly thank you all. CCIA is a unique and important institution. I believe the relationship between an innovative industry and our free and open society is a key that we all need to keep in mind and understand. There is an inherent congruency between our industry and the foundation blocks of a free society. Our name, we often over the years have questioned whether it's the right name to keep, but I always thought computing and communications, computing was the gathering and organization of information. And communications part was disseminate that to the world and to the public in a positive way. We know we'll get into some of the dark ways in which it's used, but the truth is fundamentally in an open society, knowledgeable people, informed people, and the ability of people to communicate is essential. And I always felt blessed that I could spend my career in an industry which was, I think, a positive force to the world. And I feel that way as much now as ever. The growth of CCIA has been paralleled by the growth of the industry. I have some war stories, which I won't go into, joking of how we used to fight to get attention, to get a reporter to listen to us, to get somebody on Hill to hold a hearing on something we cared about. Those days are gone. It is not hard to get attention anymore, whether we want it or not. And that's as it should be, because the role of the industry and the role of CCIA has been one of growth and importance and an appreciation that what we do, what we stand for, how we operate as an industry is important to the country and to the world. We need to get it right. We don't always get it perfectly right, and we need to acknowledge that. But I believe that most of us in the industry try to get it right, and work hard to do that. The ability of people to access information, to roam the internet, to expand the human potential is part of what we are in the future is, I hope. I do think we have to be cognizant, and for years I've used the metaphor, maybe a little strained, but comparing us to the atomic industry. And those of you who know some history know that Joseph Oppenheimer was one of the founders and creators of atomic energy. But he was, from the very beginning, as he was creating atomic energy, he spoke up and said, but we have to be careful how it's used. It is a force for good and positive, but it has the potential to have an ominous negative side, and we need to pay attention to that. And awareness now, I think, of the way some folks have been able to misuse our technology, our industry, our companies. And we need to deal with that. That's part of it. There is a flip side of every coin. I think we can deal with it. I think we have to focus on it. We cannot be distracted by just the criticisms and forget all of the positives that we do. But we also have to make sure we do address the downsides and the risks. I hope, and I have a lot of confidence that Matt, the CCIA team, and all of you who are involved with us keep that in mind, and that the broad interests of the public are there. CCIA, I guess I would simply add it, we've always focused on substance and reality and dealing with issues in depth, not in a casual way, not in a flippant way, but with data and reality at the center of what we do. Substantive staff who sometimes have to tell our members, you've got to look at that a little harder because we think you might not be where we want you, you should be. But I think the uniqueness of CCI was always that we had a schizophrenic identity. We were a trade association, we were a consultancy, we were a think tank, and we were a public interest group, jumbled together in different ways. And I think we will continue to do that. I think it's important that we keep that mix, that we keep focused on not just, although we care greatly about our members, but we care about the broader issues and principles about society, about the nature of a free society that we are a key part of and have to help promote and not be used in any ways which harm that. So a few comments. Thank you all again. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everybody, for everything you've done over the years.
Actually, let me hang on down.
I'll leave it there.
Okay. In closing, let me just briefly say thank you all for celebrating this milestone occasion with us tonight. And I'd also like to thank our members, many of whom are here, for your continued support. I'd like to thank Maggie Clark for making this evening and all of this possible, with Planet Word hosting us. And let me also thank members of the CCIA team, both past and present, for making the past 50 years possible. Here's to 50 more. Thank you. Have a good evening and enjoy yourselves.